Solitude is power, not a curse. When the noise fades, only your true voice remains. Greatness is conceived in silence, not in distraction. If you're still drowning in the noise, still clinging to the crowd, still fearing the silence, then you're already losing. But if you're ready to embrace solitude, to confront your true self, and to forge your greatness, then this is for you. Welcome to the silence, asterisk. When the endless noise and distractions of the world finally fade away, what remains is your true voice, the raw, unfiltered echo of your soul that's been drowned out by the chaos for far too long. Greatness is not birthed in the shallow waters of distraction or in the fleeting applause of others. It is conceived in silence, in the unforgiving stillness where there's nowhere to run, no one to hide behind, and no distractions to mask your weaknesses. Solitude is not a curse. It is the forge where the strongest steel is made, the crucible where your will is tempered and hardened until it becomes unbreakable. The weak tremble at the thought of solitude because they mistake it for loneliness, a pit of despair where their fears grow unchecked. They seek constant noise, meaningless connections, and empty distractions to drown out the terrifying silence within. But the strong are different. They understand that solitude is not a punishment, it is power. In solitude, you face yourself with brutal honesty. You confront your failures, your fears, your doubts, and you strip away every excuse that has held you back. It is here, in this ruthless silence, that you build the foundation for your rise. Solitude grants you clarity that no crowd can provide. It sharpens your focus, deepens your resolve, and fuels the fire inside that refuses to be extinguished. It is the battlefield where you conquer your inner demons and emerge stronger, fiercer, and more determined than ever. If you want to rise, truly rise, you must stop running from solitude. You must embrace it, welcome it, and use it to transform yourself into a force the world cannot ignore. Because the world respects only those who are unshakable from within. And that unshakable strength is born in silence, in solitude, not in the noise of the world, but in the depth of your own relentless, unyielding spirit. Like molten steel dragged from the searing furnace, hammered violently on the anvil, each strike brutal, painful, and relentless, so too is the forging of your spirit. This is no gentle process. It is a merciless crucible where weakness is burned away, where every fracture and flaw is hammered into something sharper, harder, and far more deadly. Isolation is that crucible, harsh and unforgiving. The weak see isolation as a prison, a place of loneliness and despair to be escaped at any cost. They cling to noise, distractions, and the comforting lies of company, afraid to face the raw truth within themselves. But the strong understand that isolation is not the enemy, it is the path to greatness. In the silence and separation from the world's distractions, your mind sharpens, your focus intensifies, and your purpose becomes razor clear. It is in isolation that you strip away every weakness, every excuse, every external crutch, until only the raw, unbreakable core remains. This solitude burns away the soft edges and reveals the blade hidden beneath your flesh, the weapon that will cut through doubt, fear, and every obstacle in your path. If you want to rise, you must embrace isolation. You must willingly step into that crucible and allow the fires of solitude to purify you, to sculpt you, to transform you into something far beyond what you were before. Because isolation is not a curse, it is the hammer that forges warriors. The world respects only those who have been forged in fire. Being surrounded by people creates a deceptive illusion, a false sense of movement, like a ship caught in a whirlpool spinning endlessly but going nowhere. It's easy to mistake noise for progress, chatter for action, distraction for growth. But alone, stripped of all illusions, you stand at a brutal crossroads. You either rise or shatter. There is no middle ground, no safety net, no one to catch you when you fall. The silence exposes everything, your weaknesses, your fears, your true potential waiting to be unleashed. The weak cling desperately to noise, to the chaos of constant distractions, believing it shields them from facing a harsh reality inside. They drown themselves in meaningless activity, pretending they are moving forward while the world passes them by. But the strong understand that noise is the enemy of greatness. True progress is born in quiet focus, in ruthless clarity, in the solitary moments where the world's distractions fall away and only your will remains. If you want to rise, you must reject the noise, the endless chatter, the false busyness, the comfort of distraction. You must dive into the silence, face yourself with merciless honesty, and forge a path through the void. Because noise is not progress. True power, true rise, comes only when you embrace the quiet and unleash the storm within. Da Vinci didn't just hide from the world in silence, he carved his genius out of it. Nietzsche didn't flee to the mountains to escape. He climbed into the void to summon clarity that crushed the weak and illuminated the strong. These were not acts of running away, they were deliberate acts of gathering power, of isolating themselves from the noise and distractions that would dilute their vision. The greatest minds, the fiercest warriors of thought and spirit, chose solitude as their battlefield. The weak mistake solitude for loneliness, a barren wasteland of emptiness to be feared and filled with meaningless noise. But the strong understand the brutal truth. Solitude is power. It's the place where you confront your raw self without illusions, where your mind sharpens and your will hardens. It is in the silence that you find the strength to rise beyond the mediocre masses who drown in constant noise and distraction. If you want to rise, you must embrace solitude. You must seek it out, hunger for it, and let it forge you into something far greater than the world expects. Because the great minds, the real kings and queens of strength, chose solitude. And through it, they became unstoppable. Solitude strips away every mask you hide behind, forcing you into brutal self-confrontation where there's no place left to run or hide. In that merciless silence, your weaknesses reveal themselves not as enemies, but as teachers demanding your attention. Every ache, every wound becomes a lesson. Every pang of pain transforms into hard-earned wisdom. Solitude is the forge of truth, where illusions burn away and only the raw, unfiltered core of your being remains. The weak fear this exposure, mistaking solitude for loneliness, a desolate prison of despair. They scramble to fill this silence with noise, distractions, anything to avoid facing their own shadows. But the strong, those destined to rise, understand that solitude is not a curse. It is the most powerful crucible of transformation. It is in the deep, unforgiving quiet that you break down to build back stronger, sharper, and more relentless than ever before. If you want to rise, you must embrace solitude without hesitation. You must step willingly into its fire, knowing that it will strip you bare, refine you, and shape you into an unbreakable force. Because solitude is the forge of truth, and truth is the foundation of true power. One traps you in endless longing, a hollow ache for connection that never truly satisfies, a desperate craving to fill the void with anything that distracts from the crushing weight inside. The other unlocks discovery, a fierce, unforgiving clarity that reveals who you really are beneath all the lies and excuses. The ordinary, the weak, they fear solitude because it exposes their limits, the cracks in their armor, the shadows they've tried to bury deep. Loneliness becomes their cage, a prison built from fear and avoidance, locking them inside a false comfort that slowly suffocates. But the strong see the truth. Loneliness is a cage, but solitude is freedom. It is the wild terrain where you confront your deepest fears, strip away weakness, and discover the untamed power lying dormant within. Solitude is not a punishment to endure, but a gift to seize the crucible where you break free from every chain and emerge whole and unstoppable. If you want to rise, you must embrace solitude with open arms. You must step beyond the cage of loneliness and walk into the freedom that only true solitude can offer. Because loneliness will bind you forever, but solitude will set you free. Writers, athletes, philosophers, none of their paths were paved by the noise of the crowd or the comfort of company. Each carved their way alone, in the cold shadows where no one else dared to linger. The greatest creations, the revolutionary ideas, the thunderous breakthroughs, they were first whispered in solitude, forged in silence long before they shook the world. The visionary is not born amidst noise and distraction. The visionary is born in silence, in the depths where clarity and purpose are forged without compromise. A weak mistakes solitude for loneliness, a barren wasteland of isolation to be feared and escaped. They cling to noise and distractions, afraid to face the raw, unforgiving truth of their own minds. But the strong know the brutal reality. Solitude is power. It is the crucible where brilliance is forged, where focus sharpens, and where the soul learns to roar in the absence of applause. If you want to rise, if you want to become unstoppable, you must embrace solitude. You must seek it, hunger for it, and allow it to strip away every weakness until only your unbreakable core remains. Because the visionary is born in silence, and silence is where legends are made. The world is a relentless sea of mediocrity, a crushing tide that drowns originality beneath waves of conformity and noise. In this storm, the strongest minds do not scream to be heard, they retreat, silently, deliberately, to sharpen their weapons in the solitude few dare to endure. Solitude is not an absence, but a ritualist sacred practice of power, discipline, and ruthless self-mastery. It is the battlefield where your mind is honed to razor precision, your focus locked onto the prize others can't even see. The weak mistake solitude for loneliness, a barren exile to be avoided at all costs. They chase distractions, noisy comforts that mask their fear of being alone with themselves. But the strong know the unshakable truth: solitude is power. It is the sanctuary where you strip away every weakness, every doubt, and forge a mind so sharp and relentless it slices through the noise of the world like a blade. If you want to rise, if you want to stand unbreakable against the tide, you must embrace solitude. You must make it your ritual, your weapon, your source of unstoppable strength. Because solitude is not a curse, it is the forge of power, and power belongs to those who dare to wield it. The crowd is a suffocating weight, pressing down on ambition until it struggles for breath. Surrounded by the noise of voices that echo only comfort and conformity, your fire dims, your vision blurs, and your will weakens. But solitude, unyielding solitude, is the breath of life for ambition. It is the force that unleashes the wildest, most dangerous parts of your spirit, sharpening your ideas against the unforgiving blade of independence. Isolation is the crucible that separates the ordinary from the extraordinary. It strips away the distractions, the shallow approvals, the empty comfort of the herd, leaving only the fiercest version of yourself standing bare and unbreakable. The weak see isolation as an enemy, a lonely prison to be escaped. But the strong, the ones who rise above and rewrite the rules, know that isolation is the path to greatness. If you want to rise, you must embrace isolation with every fiber of your being. You must step away from the crowd as choking grasp and walk the solitary road where legends are forged. Because isolation does not break you, it makes you extraordinary. Rebellion against conformity doesn't roar in the crowd, it begins in silence, in the quiet refusal to bend, break, or blend into the suffocating masses. A weak chase validation, desperately seeking approval in every face, every word, every empty glance, afraid to stand without the safety of the crowd. But the strong, those who carve their own path, find their power and conviction in the unshakable certainty that their truth is worth standing for, even if it means standing alone. Greatness demands this brutal willingness to stand apart, to walk through the cold shadows where few dare to tread. The weak mistake solitude for loneliness, a dark pit of isolation to be feared and avoided. But the strong know the harsh truth: solitude is not loneliness, it is power distilled to its purest form. It is the arena where your will is tested, your spirit tempered, and your purpose forged beyond all doubt. If you want to rise, you must embrace solitude without hesitation or fear. You must be ready to stand alone, to face the silence and find in it the roar of your own unbreakable strength. Because greatness through greatness demands a willingness to stand alone and own it. Society chains you tightly with endless distractions and suffocating duties, weighing you down with noise that drowns your true voice and obligations that steal your time and will. You become a prisoner to the expectations of others, lost in a maze of meaningless tasks that blur your purpose and shatter your focus. But the moment you step back away from the noise, the chaos, the constant demands, you reclaim something sacred: your mind, your power, your freedom. Solitude is the hammer that breaks these chains, the silent force that cuts through the web of obligation and distraction. The weak mistake solitude for loneliness, a cold and empty cell to be feared. They scramble for noise, for connection, for anything to fill the void and avoid facing themselves. But the strong, the ones destined to rise, know the truth: solitude is power. It is the battlefield where you regain control, where your mind sharpens, and your spirit grows untouchable. If you want to rise, you must embrace solitude. You must break free from the chains of obligation and distraction, stepping into the silence where your true strength is born. Because only in solitude do you find the freedom to become unstoppable. True power never blooms in the crowded noise of mediocrity. It is forged in the cold, unyielding isolation where distractions fall away and only the rock core of your being remains. Without solitude, the hero inside you stays dormant, trapped in a restless sleep, unaware of the battles waiting beyond comfort. The journey to greatness is not a path walked with the crowd. It begins alone, in the shadows where no one watches, where the world's applause cannot reach you. The weak mistake solitude for loneliness, a barren wasteland to be feared and avoided. They seek comfort in numbers, drowning their fears in the shallow waters of distraction. But the strong, those who rise above, understand the brutal truth. Solitude is power. It is the crucible where heroes are made, where your spirit is tempered by silence and struggle, and where your purpose is carved into stone. If you want to rise, you must embrace solitude with open arms and unshakable resolve. You must step into the lonely forge of your own becoming, knowing that the hero's journey always begins alone, and it is in that solitude that true power is born. When the noise finally stops, when the endless distractions fall away like dust in the wind, that's when you come face to face with your real self, the raw, unfiltered core that no one else sees and that you've been hiding even from yourself. This is where transformation begins, not in the chaos of the world, but in the deep silence where your truth can no longer be ignored or escaped. The world fears this kind of solitude because it strips away every lie, every mask, every comforting illusion. It reveals the brutal truth waiting beneath the surface. The weak mistake solitude for loneliness, a cold prison cell to be feared and avoided. They drown themselves in noise to avoid the reflection staring back at them in the silence. But the strong, the ones who truly rise, know that solitude is power. It is the battlefield where your illusions are shattered and your spirit is reborn stronger, sharper, and more relentless than ever before. If you want to rise, you must embrace solitude with open arms and fearless heart. You must welcome the silence that the world fears, because in that silence lies your truth, and in your truth lies your power. Solitude is not a curse whispered in fear. It is raw, unyielding power waiting to be claimed. Isolation is the crucible where the weak are burned away, and the unbreakable spirit is forged anew. Noise, distractions, and endless chatter are illusions of progress, hollow echoes that trap the mind in shallow waters. The great minds throughout history, the visionaries, the rebels, the rulers of their fate chose solitude. They understood that solitude is the forge of truth. A place where masks fall and raw, brutal reality sharpens the soul. Loneliness is a cage crafted by fear, but solitude is freedom, the liberation of the mind and spirit from the chains of obligation and expectation. The visionary is not born in the crowd, but in silence, quiet, cold. Unyielding silence. Solitude is not just a moment, it is a ritual. A sacred practice that separates the ordinary from the extraordinary, the followers from the leaders. Greatness demands a brutal willingness to stand alone, to face the darkness within and the world's judgment without flinching. The hero's journey begins in that solitude alone, unshielded and ready to fight. The world fears solitude because it reveals truth, strips away illusions, and forces transformation. If you are ready to embrace solitude, to confront your true self without mercy, and to forge your greatness in the fire of silence, then this is your moment. Master the silence within, own it. Let it burn through your doubts and distractions. Rise alone, unshakable, unstoppable. Asterisk if this resonated with you. If you're ready to stop drowning in the noise and start embracing the silence, then hit that subscribe button. This is just the beginning. The journey to greatness is long, but it's worth it. And I'll be here every step of the way to guide you. So subscribe now, and let's rise together, asterisk.